My name is Madison. Standing here at my sister's wedding reception, I'm reliving that moment when the host announced my name over the microphone. We'd like to extend a special acknowledgement, his voice boomed across the room, to the owner of Madison's Event Horizons, whose generosity made tonight's pricing possible for the family. If you'd like to show your appreciation, please join me in recognizing Madison. The room fell silent. I watched as my mother's glass, halfway to her mouth, froze. Her face, in those 3 seconds that I've replayed countless times, crumbled like a house of cards. It wasn't a dramatic collapse with tears or gasps, just a quiet realization that something fundamental had shifted. My father, sitting nearby, turned in his seat. His expression wasn't one of pride or even surprise. It was the look of a man who'd just discovered he'd been making a costly mistake for years. Let me take you back. I come from a family where appearances matter. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, are all about status and social standing. My father, a well-known lawyer in town, is always busy climbing the corporate ladder. My mother, a former beauty queen, spends her days attending charity events and making sure our family name shines in the community. My younger sister, Lily, is the apple of their eye. She's beautiful, charming, and has always followed the path laid out for her. I, on the other hand, have always been the black sheep. I've had big dreams, but I've learned to keep them to myself. I remember driving for 6 long hours to get to this wedding. I'd bought a dress that stretched my budget thin, but I wanted to look presentable. As I prepared for the day, I practiced a smile in the car's rear view mirror. I knew that whenever our family got together, something was bound to happen. When I arrived at the luxuriously decorated venue, the flowers were in full bloom, and the soft lighting gave the place a warm, golden glow. The tables were covered in white silk, and gentle music filled the air, as if the world was in perfect harmony. I was standing near the entrance when my parents spotted me. My mother waved me over with that fake smile she reserves for public functions. It was wide, bright, but completely insincere. My father had his hand on the shoulder of a wealthy-looking man, and beside him stood a woman in an elegant red dress. I assumed they were part of Lily's new in-laws. My mother beckoned me closer. I walked over, smoothing my dress, and plastered on the practiced smile. "This is our other daughter," she said, her voice already betraying a certain distance. "Madison." She paused pointedly. "She works at a local diner." That was it. She didn't mention how I'd taken online courses to learn event planning. She didn't talk about the late nights I'd spent working on my business while also serving customers at the diner. She didn't even acknowledge the long drive I'd made to be here and support my sister. It was as if my entire life was reduced to a simple, unimportant job at a diner. The woman in the red dress gave a polite chuckle, and her husband smiled that awkward smile of people unsure if they're hearing a joke. My father just nodded, as if that single sentence was a complete description of me and that I didn't deserve any further explanation. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I held on to my smile. I'd become an expert at hiding my true feelings. I stepped back and got myself a glass of water. As I stood quietly by the side table, watching the room fill with guests, Lily floated by in her gorgeous wedding gown. She caught my eye and gave me that apologetic look. I'd seen that look many times before. It was a silent apology, a mix of sympathy and helplessness. She knew what our parents had done, but she never spoke up. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. I have to admit that. When Lily walked down the aisle, I felt a genuine warmth in my heart. It was a moment untouched by the humiliation I'd faced at the entrance. I clapped and even teared up a little. I was truly happy for her. Now, let me tell you about Madison's Event Horizons. It all started when I was 22. I rented a small storage unit and began planning small events on the side while working at the diner. I spent my days serving coffee and burgers and my nights poring over event planning books and coordinating small parties on weekends. It was a grueling schedule that left me with only a few hours of sleep each night, but I was determined. The diner job wasn't a dead end. It was the foundation of my business. The money I earned there paid for my first business license and the equipment I needed to start taking on more clients. Every shift I worked, every early morning I showed up with tired eyes and a name tag. I was building my dream. By 25, I landed my first big venue contract. And by 27, Madison's Event Horizons had organized over 300 events across 5 cities. I'd become known for my attention to detail and my ability to make every event unforgettable, all without a single word of support from my family. When Lily started planning her wedding, I knew I wanted to do something special for her. I quietly got in touch with the venue coordinator and arranged a significant discount on the booking fees. It was my private gift, and I didn't tell my parents or attach any note. I was used to working in silence, without seeking their approval or acknowledgement. After the host finished his announcement, I stood up. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and walked towards the front of the room. It was the same determined stride I'd taken my whole adult life, without anyone paving the way for me. The host extended his hand, and I shook it firmly. The applause in the room was warm and sincere. People were clapping for what I'd achieved, not knowing about the painful introduction at the entrance. Back at my seat, my mother reached across the table and put her hand on mine. She didn't say a word at first. The woman in the red dress was watching from across the room with a completely different expression. My father cleared his throat a couple of times before he finally managed to speak. His words were weak, something about not realizing and being proud. But it was too little, too late. I listened and nodded. I hadn't found it in me to forgive them yet, but I wasn't ready to cut them off either. I sat there in that carefully chosen dress, at a wedding I'd silently made possible, and I realized that the life I'd built in the shadows was finally speaking for itself. No one calls me the diner girl anymore. They don't have the chance. If this story has touched you, if you've ever been underestimated by those who should have believed in you first, then this is your story too. Subscribe to our channel, and every week, we'll bring you more real stories of people who refuse to be written off. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an inspiring tale.